Okay, so what about this generational disconnect I was talking about? This is a lot harder to nail down. I can't just point at graphs on this because we're talking about narratives and perspectives and attitudes. And also, I realized I don't think I was entirely accurate in saying there's a generational split, because I know plenty of people my age and older who are mad as hell. This is really about a split between two different kinds of media, one aimed at an older audience and one aimed at a younger audience. Now, I was trying to find a way of really articulating what I feel is going on, and I thought I would start with, once again, the University of Oxford, Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. Every year they produce a digital news report. This is actually last year's. This is an article on the changing news habits and attitudes of younger audiences. Now, I'm just going to paraphrase this rather than actually quote it. It is worth a read though, and I'm quite confident if you're under the age of 30, if you read this, you will instantly see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a part where it talks about why it is that younger audiences are avoiding mainstream news altogether. And I'm going to ruthlessly editorialize here. For me, I got the gist that they were saying is because they're delicate snowflakes who can't handle the harsh realities of life. And I wanted to have these websites in front of me to just try and illustrate why I feel that isn't true. So let's pick a mainstream news outlet in the UK. I thought I would go with the one that the Reuters Institute says is the most trusted, BBC News. So, the BBC News homepage. I have done like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 takes of this because I just keep feeling like I'm not being clear enough. And the news keeps changing each day, so I've got to react to that. I've got to say, as a former comms worker, there's just way more going on here than I can unpack. Like, I would have opinions about every single article, but let's just try and get an overview of what's going on here. For the last few days, the main story has been wildfires in Hawaii, understandably. Now it's Trump being charged with crimes, again, understandably. It's more everything else on the website. I keep seeing the same types of stories over and over again. Horrible things happening abroad, very specific local stories, often very specific local crime stories, lots of sport, a lot about Ukraine, understandably, foreign tragedy, very local, very specific. This whole section, tackling it together. Now, I'll talk about this in a second, but this is just one part of this news website that looks like a government press release. Now, one of the first things that occurred to me is I found it quite surprising that there weren't any stories on the Hollywood strikes. For social media, this is like a goldmine of a story. The most famous people on the planet standing on the red carpet talking about like standing in solidarity with their unions. This is weird times. This has sparked all sorts of other conversations about whether other industries might unionize and push back against constantly falling wages. Now, there's no mention of this on the front page, but I did a search and there are stories about the Hollywood strikes. And they're kind of weird, and they're weird in this very specific British mainstream media way. Why are they weird? Well, they go into very personal stories of actors who I haven't heard of, saying strange things like most of us have got second jobs, so it'll be fine. It's almost like they don't want you to get a sense of a bigger conversation that's going on. It goes in really deep and really granular, and it's personal stories. And that's kind of the pattern of this website. There seems to be this absolute aversion to talking about any wider overarching issues. Everything is brought down to a micro granular level. But the part of the BBC News website that really leapt out at me was there are these headings at the top for, the big news issues. I was really surprised to see there was a tab for the cost of living crisis. I would not have expected the BBC to provide that much in-depth analysis on the potential causes and outcomes of the cost of living crisis in the UK. But that's because they didn't. When you click on it, this is just advice on how to manage your finances. And for anyone else who followed the 2008 financial crisis when it was happening, you'll see that once again, like the big takeaway from this is pay the banks first. What you can do about your mortgage payments, how you can pay your debts, what if you can't pay your mortgage, useful tips on saving money. The gist is that the cost of living crisis is just this unfortunate thing we have to deal with, and we are, where is it? There we go, we are tackling it together. This feels like a government press release. Now, there is some analysis if you scroll right down. Here, why is UK inflation so high? This is a really interesting article and I could spend hours unpacking it. I'm going to try and do a top level thing. This is so vague, and it suggests that Britain has got a cost of living crisis because of COVID and because of the war in Ukraine. It doesn't go into details about why Britain has been so much more affected than other countries in Europe. And unlike on social media, you're not going to see any discussion of Brexit or austerity policies, or basically anything that suggests that the cause of this might not be just a really long run of bad luck that the UK has been suffering from. Now, like I said, the UK news changes every day, and today there is this story I feel I should mention which says UK wages grow at record rate, which is a positive story suggesting that the economy is in safe hands. And, that is good news. That's not nothing. Again, I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing this because this is a YouTube video, but this only skirts over the fact that although wages have increased, they haven't increased above inflation. So technically speaking, they haven't really grown, they've just fallen less. And that might well be because they were in such a terrible state last year, so I feel this is a misleading article. Now, to be fair, this isn't like the BBC's flagship news. This isn't the Today programme or Newsnight. But if I just quickly have a look at what Newsnight is talking about, for me it's a similar thing. It's talking about what seems like big questions in incredibly narrow ways, focusing on immigration, scary foreigners, American politics, scary foreigners, maybe climate change is fine. Again, I'm editorializing, sorry, but this is just trying to get this big overview. Now, at the end of all this, I don't want to leave by suggesting that the world is going to hell in a handcart. This is just how I feel legacy media portrays the world. I think that there's a whole generation of younger creators who are going into these topics in infinitely more depth every day on social media. I don't think that they're avoiding mainstream news because they're delicate flowers. I think they're avoiding it because they expect better, and they fucking should.